The wind howls across the high peaks, carrying the bite of ice and the scent of pine. Below, a lone figure moves through the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the American West. A mountain man, a phantom of the Rockies, carving out an existence where few dared to tread, hundreds of miles from the nearest echo of civilization. How did they do it? How did these solitary figures, these buckskin-clad knights-errant, as adventurer George Ruxton called them, not just survive but master a land that could kill a man in a dozen different ways before breakfast? It wasn't just grit, though they possessed a resilience forged in hardship. It wasn't just an intimate knowledge of the land, though their skills in tracking, reading weather, and understanding wildlife were legendary. It was also about the tools they carried, not a vast modern arsenal, but a ruthlessly curated collection of steel, wood, and leather. Each piece chosen not for luxury, but for brutal efficiency. Each item honed by necessity, proven by countless trials against the raw edge of the frontier. These weren't mere objects. They were extensions of the mountain man's own senses and will, the instruments through which skill became survival, the keys that unlocked the harsh bounty of the wilderness. From felling giant pines for a winter cabin that would stand against howling blizzards, to setting the delicate trigger of a beaver trap hidden beneath icy water. From skinning a massive buffalo bull with practiced ease to mending a worn moccasin by the flickering firelight using needle and sinew. Their toolkit was the unsung hero of their epic saga. What were these indispensable items carried on their backs or strapped to their pack mules? What secrets did they hold about resourcefulness and adaptation? What stories could they tell of the hands that wielded them against the raw, untamed heart of the continent? My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. Today, we delve deep into the essential toolkit that helped mountain men build their world, hunt for their lives and fortunes, and ultimately survive against staggering odds. Part 1. The Foundation: Tools for Shelter and Camp. The wilderness offered no inherent comfort, no ready-made refuge. Shelter wasn't found, it was made. Camp wasn't a place stumbled upon, it was an act of deliberate creation against the relentless elements. And at the very heart of this defiant act of creation lay a few fundamental tools, the bedrock upon which a temporary lean-to, a semi-permanent dugout, or even a season-long log cabin could be raised from the forest floor. First and foremost among these, the undisputed king of campcraft was the axe. More than just a simple cutting tool, the axe was the primary shaper of the mountain man's immediate environment, the instrument used to impose a semblance of order on the chaos of nature. Whether it was a heavier, full-sized felling axe, perhaps carried by men operating from a base camp or part of a larger brigade, or more commonly for the lone trapper, a smaller, incredibly versatile trade axe or belt axe carried constantly on the person, its presence was utterly non-negotiable. Picture the scene described in countless journals. A sudden Rocky Mountain blizzard descending like a white curtain, the temperature plummeting with terrifying speed. The ability to quickly fell dead, standing timber, limb-thick pines for a protective lean-to, or gather enough firewood for a roaring, life-sustaining blaze wasn't a matter of convenience. It was the razor-thin line between freezing to death under a drift of snow and living to see the pale light of dawn. Historical records, meticulously gathered by scholars like Carl P. Russell, consistently list axes among the most crucial and numerous trade goods shipped west by the burgeoning fur companies. The Hudson's Bay Company, operating out of the north, and John Jacob Astor's powerful American Fur Company, headquartered in St. Louis, shipped thousands upon thousands of axe heads to the remote trading posts and annual rendezvous points. These weren't ornate tools. They were typically simple, utilitarian forged heads, often weighing between 1 and 3 pounds, designed for durability and ease of sharpening rather than finesse. The mountain man, ever resourceful, would typically fashion his own handle, or helve, selecting a straight-grained, resilient piece of hickory or ash found locally, carefully shaping it with his knife and fitting it securely into the eye of the axe head. This belt axe, hanging readily from his sash or belt, became an extension of his arm. It cleared campsites of brush, chopped firewood daily, notched logs with surprising precision for cabin construction, helped butcher large game carcasses when necessary, and in desperate moments could even serve as a formidable close-quarters weapon. Its rhythmic thud-thud-thud, echoing through the silent forest, was the sound of civilization being carved, however temporarily, into the wild heart of the continent. Alongside the axe, nearly every mountain man carried a sturdy knife, often referred to simply as a belt knife, or, reflecting its common origin and use, a butcher knife. While we'll delve deeper into its role in hunting later, its utility in basic campcraft was immense and constant. Think of the countless small essential tasks: shaving fine curls of wood into tinder to catch a spark, cutting strips of rawhide or lengths of plant fiber for cordage, trimming small branches for shelter frames or trap triggers, preparing food, slicing jerky, dicing roots, portioning meat, and making endless repairs to clothing and gear. These knives weren't the specialized, multi-featured survival blades of today. They were typically robust, straightforward designs, often featuring a blade length of 6 to 8 inches, a thick spine for strength to withstand prying or batoning wood, and a simple, easily maintained edge. Many were trade knives, mass-produced in the factories of Sheffield, England, or later in burgeoning American industrial centers. They were affordable, functional, and readily available at trading posts. The knife was perhaps the most personal of all tools, always within immediate reach, its wooden or bone handle worn smooth and dark by the constant contact of a calloused hand. A silent, intimate testament to the daily struggles and small, hard-won victories of frontier life. For those trappers planning longer stays, intending to winter over in a specific valley, or perhaps even establishing a semi-permanent base camp, another tool, though less universally carried due to its specialized nature, size, and weight, proved invaluable: the auger or gimlet. These simple, hand-powered drills were essential for creating clean, round holes in wood. Why was this seemingly minor capability so important? In a world utterly devoid of manufactured nails or screws, mountain men often relied on the ancient technique of using wooden pegs, or trunnels, a contraction of tree nails, to join logs together securely in cabin construction or to assemble basic functional furniture like benches, tables, or storage racks. An auger allowed them to bore precise, uniform holes into which these carefully shaped pegs could be driven tightly, creating remarkably strong and lasting joints capable of withstanding harsh weather and the rigors of frontier life. While a highly skilled man could painstakingly burn holes through wood using hot embers or carve mortise and tenon joints with exceptional knife and axe work, the auger made the process significantly faster, cleaner, and resulted in a much sturdier, more weatherproof structure. Finding evidence of auger use at an old cabin site might signify a trapper who was more settled, perhaps one with a family or one operating as part of a more organized company brigade. Finally, while perhaps not always considered a tool in the same dramatic vein as the axe or rifle, the simple shovel or spade held significant practical value, especially for establishing a more permanent or comfortable camp. While often improvised in the field, using a large piece of sturdy bark, a flattened section of elk antler, the shoulder blade from a buffalo, or even just cupped hands and a digging stick, a proper iron spade head, perhaps acquired through trade or salvaged, was a highly prized possession. It made digging a safe, contained fire pit significantly easier and more effective, reducing the risk of accidental wildfires. It allowed for the construction of surprisingly effective pit shelters or dugouts, especially in treeless plains or during extreme winter conditions. It facilitated the digging of rudimentary latrines some distance from camp, a crucial factor in maintaining basic sanitation and preventing the spread of debilitating diseases like dysentery, which could cripple a trapping party. It also helped level uneven ground for a more stable tent pitch or a solid cabin foundation. Though undeniably cumbersome to transport, its utility in shaping the earth for safety, comfort, and sanitation made it a worthwhile burden for many, particularly those traveling in groups or planning extended stays. These tools, the indispensable axe, the ever-present knife, the specialized auger, the practical spade, formed the very foundation of the mountain man's ability to impose a fragile order on the overwhelming wilderness. They were the tools of building, the tools of creating a small pocket of relative safety and comfort, a temporary home, against the vast, profound indifference of untamed nature. Part 2. The Hunt, Tools for Sustenance and Trade. Survival in the high, lonely mountains wasn't merely about finding shelter from the storm, it was a relentless quest for sustenance. And for the mountain man, sustenance was inextricably linked with commerce. The very same skills and tools used to put fresh meat over the fire were often the ones employed to harvest the soft gold, the thick, lustrous pelts of the North American beaver that fueled the entire economic engine of the era. The toolkit for the hunt was specialized, demanding not just brute strength, but precision, unwavering reliability, and a deep, almost intuitive understanding of both the quarry and the intricate workings of the equipment itself. Towering above all other hunting tools, the undisputed symbol of the mountain man was the rifle, specifically the long-barreled muzzle-loading rifle. In the early decades of the 19th century, this was typically a flintlock ignition system, where flint struck steel to create sparks that ignited the priming powder. Later, particularly from the 1830s onwards, the more reliable percussion cap system gained favor, famously exemplified by the powerful and accurate plains rifles crafted by the Hawken brothers, Jacob and Samuel, in their St. Louis workshop. These weren't just firearms, they were absolute lifelines. A single, well-aimed shot could mean the difference between a full belly and gnawing starvation, the crucial factor in successfully defending oneself against a charging grizzly bear or hostile warriors. The mountain man depended on his rifle with an intensity few modern people can comprehend. It had to be unerringly accurate, capable of hitting targets at considerable distances. It needed the power, the sheer stopping force, to bring down formidable North American game like buffalo, elk, moose, and the feared grizzly bear. And above all, it had to be reliable, functioning flawlessly in the brutal cold, driving rain, or swirling snows of the Rockies. Osborne Russell's journal casually mentions his rifle placed carefully across his saddle pommel, not stored away, but always ready. But the rifle, magnificent as it was useless in isolation. It required a suite of essential accessories meticulously maintained and typically carried in a dedicated leather possibles bag or hunting pouch slung over the shoulder for instant access. The powder horn, often ornately carved or scrimshawed during long winter nights, was crafted from a polished cow or buffalo horn, its natural waterproof qualities essential for keeping the vital black powder dry. A separate pouch, usually soft leather, contained a supply of lead balls carefully cast to the precise caliber of the rifle, along with patching material. Small squares of greased linen or cotton cloth wrapped around the ball before loading to ensure a tight seal within the rifled barrel, maximizing accuracy and power. Extra flints, for flintlocks, carefully napped for a sharp edge, or small tins of percussion caps for caplocks, were also crucial. A ramrod, usually hickory or sometimes metal, essential for seating the charge and ball firmly down the long barrel, was typically carried in protective metal tubes or thimbles mounted beneath the rifle barrel itself. Beyond the loading components, tools for maintenance were equally critical. A worm, a corkscrew-like attachment for the ramrod used to extract an unfired charge or a cleaning patch. A vent pick for clearing the touch hole on flintlocks. Perhaps a small specialized screwdriver for lock maintenance, and oil or grease for lubrication and rust prevention. Proficiency with the rifle wasn't just about pulling the trigger, it was a complex ballet of meticulous loading sequences, constant vigilance against moisture, careful cleaning and maintenance, and the hard-earned ability to reload with speed and composure, often under extreme pressure, skills honed through endless repetition and the unforgiving lessons of necessity. While the rifle secured meat for the pot and provided defense, the economic engine driving the entire mountain man era, the very reason most of these men endured such hardship ran on beaver pelts. And for the systematic, large-scale harvesting of beaver, the essential tool was the cold, unforgiving steel trap. Introduced by European traders centuries earlier, these leg-hold traps, particularly the improved designs emerging in the early 19th century, revolutionized the fur trade and enabled the near extermination of beaver populations across vast swathes of the continent. Typically weighing several pounds each and made of hand-forged iron or early steel, a trapper like Osborne Russell might carry half a dozen or more, a significant weight to transport through difficult terrain. The most common and highly sought after were those made by renowned makers like Sewell Newhouse of New York, whose designs became legendary for their strong, reliable springs and precisely engineered trigger mechanisms. Setting these traps effectively was far more than simply placing them in the water. It was a complex art form demanding an intimate, almost scientific knowledge of beaver behavior, habitat, and seasonal movements. Trappers would wade into icy streams, often chest-deep, seeking out beaver runs, slides, or the entrances to their lodges and bank dens. The trap had to be carefully placed on the stream bottom, often weighted with stones, and meticulously concealed with mud, leaves, or waterlogged vegetation. A scent lure, often a pungent concoction made from the beaver's own castoreum glands mixed with other secret ingredients, Russell mentions using bait for beaver, was applied to a nearby twig or mud pile to attract the beaver directly over the hidden trap pan. The trap chain, several feet long, was then securely fastened, either to a sturdy stake driven deep into the stream bed, or, more commonly, to a drogue, a heavy, waterlogged pole cut nearby. The idea of the drogue was that a trapped beaver, in its panic, might pull the stake loose, but dragging the heavy pole would quickly exhaust it and cause it to become entangled in underwater roots or debris, ensuring it drowned quickly. Drowning was crucial, not out of cruelty, but to prevent the beaver from escaping by chewing off its own leg, a desperate act known as ringing off, and importantly, to preserve the valuable pelt from damage by predators or decay. Checking the trap line each morning was a daily ritual, often performed in the pre-dawn chill, involving hours of wading in frigid water, constant alertness for signs of predators, both four-legged and two-legged rivals, and the ever-present risks of accident, hypothermia, or ambush. Once an animal, whether a beaver from a trap or larger game brought down by the rifle, was secured, another crucial tool came immediately into play: the skinning knife. While the versatile belt knife could certainly perform this task, dedicated skinning knives were often preferred by experienced hands. These typically featured a blade with a more pronounced curve, or belly, designed to follow the contours of an animal's body smoothly, and often had a rounded or blunt tip specifically to minimize the risk of accidentally puncturing the valuable hide or gutting the animal improperly. Skillful skinning was absolutely essential, particularly with beaver pelts destined for the lucrative European hat market. A poorly skinned pelt, marred by knife cuts, scores, or patches of flesh left adhering, would fetch a significantly lower price at the rendezvous, potentially negating weeks of hard work. The process involved a series of precise opening cuts, followed by carefully peeling the hide away from the carcass, often using the knife to delicately sever connective tissues while pulling firmly with the other hand. The same knife, or perhaps a heavier dedicated butcher knife, would then be used to process the carcass, expertly harvesting the usable meat for food, separating organs, and perhaps rendering fat for cooking or waterproofing. Speed and efficiency were paramount, especially in freezing weather, to prevent the carcass from becoming unworkably frozen, or, in warmer conditions, to prevent the hide from spoiling due to bacterial action, slipping hair. The trapper's proficiency with his skinning knife directly impacted both his sustenance and his profit. These tools, the reliable rifle and its essential accoutrements, the cold steel traps demanding specialized knowledge, the sharp and practiced skinning knives, were the instruments of the harvest. They were the direct link between the mountain man and the cycles of wildlife in the Rockies. They enabled him to feed himself in a land often scarce of easily obtained food, defend himself against its inherent dangers, and participate, however precariously, in the demanding, globe-spanning trade that defined his unique and challenging existence. These tools required not just ownership, but absolute mastery. Part 3. Daily Grind: Tools for Everyday Survival. Life in the vast, empty landscapes of the Rocky Mountains wasn't a constant stream of high adventure, dramatic hunts, or perilous escapes, despite what romanticized accounts might suggest. Much of it, day in and day out, was a relentless, often monotonous grind, a constant, wearying effort to maintain oneself and one's meager equipment against the ceaseless, grinding wear and tear inflicted by the harsh environment. Success, and indeed survival itself, often lay not in grand gestures, but in the accumulation of small, vital victories: a reliably warm fire against the biting cold, dry clothes after crossing an icy river, functional equipment that didn't fail at a critical moment. And for these mundane yet absolutely essential necessities of daily existence, a different set of tools, often smaller, less conspicuous, perhaps less glamorous than the rifle or the axe, proved utterly vital. Perhaps the most fundamental survival need, ranking alongside shelter and water, is fire. The ability to reliably conjure flame from the elements, often in wet, windy, or freezing conditions, was paramount. It meant warmth against hypothermia, the ability to cook food, making it safer and more digestible, light in the oppressive darkness, a means to dry sodden clothing, and a significant psychological comfort and deterrent against nocturnal predators. The mountain man's fire-starting kit, though compact, was one of his most precious possessions. The core components, used for centuries, were flint and steel. Striking a sharp edge of hard flint, a type of quartz, against a piece of high-carbon steel, often the back of a knife blade or a dedicated steel striker, produced a shower of tiny hot sparks. The challenge lay in catching these fleeting sparks in suitable tinder, exceptionally dry, fluffy material that could ignite from a single spark's brief heat. This tinder might be meticulously prepared char cloth, cotton or linen cloth partially burned in an airtight container until blackened and easily ignitable. Specific types of fungus like amadou, also known as tinder fungus, processed to be receptive to sparks, or, in a pinch, finely shredded inner bark of certain trees, like cedar or birch, dry grass rubbed to a powder, or even burred down. Once the tinder caught a spark and began to glow, a tiny, fragile ember, it was carefully transferred to a larger bundle of kindling, small, dry twigs and shavings, and gently blown upon until it burst into flame. Osborne Russell, in his journal, simply refers to these crucial items as implements for making fire. While friction-based fire-starting methods, like the bow drill, were known and used by Native American tribes, the flint and steel combination was generally faster, more reliable in damp conditions, and required less physical exertion, making it the preferred method for most European and American trappers. Losing one's fire kit or allowing the tinder to become damp could quickly escalate into a life-threatening emergency. Once a fire was successfully established, the kettle often became the symbolic and practical hearth of the temporary camp. Usually made of durable sheet iron, or sometimes lighter but more expensive brass, as listed in the inventories of trading posts like Fort Union, the kettle was indispensable for a multitude of daily tasks. Its primary function was cooking, simmering stews made from hunted game, often boiled for hours to tenderize tough cuts, preparing boiled roots or wild vegetables, or making simple cornmeal mush or flour-based bannock if supplies allowed. Equally important was its role in providing safe drinking water. Melting snow or ice in winter, or boiling water collected from streams or springs, was the only reliable way to purify it and avoid debilitating waterborne illnesses like giardiasis, often called beaver fever. Coffee or tea, highly prized luxuries obtained through trade, would also be brewed in the kettle. It was undeniably a heavy, bulky item, often blackened with soot and strapped inconveniently to the outside of a pack or saddle, but its fundamental contributions to warmth, nutrition, hydration, and health made its value far outweigh its inconvenience. A warm meal and safe drinking water provided by the kettle were crucial for maintaining physical strength and mental morale during long, arduous journeys. Maintenance of personal gear was another constant, unglamorous task essential for survival. Clothing, especially moccasins made of soft, brain-tanned deer or elk hide, wore out with alarming speed on the rocky, abrasive terrain of the mountains. Equipment made of leather, saddles, bridles, rifle slings, possibles bags, knife sheaths, required frequent inspection and repair to prevent catastrophic failure. For these vital mending tasks, the awl was an essential, if small, tool. This simple, sharply pointed instrument, often just a piece of fire-hardened wood or bone in its most basic form, but more commonly a steel point set firmly in a wooden or antler handle, was used to punch neat, consistent holes in tough leather or hide. Once the holes were made, repairs could be stitched securely using a sturdy needle and appropriate thread. Needles, being small, easily lost, and difficult to improvise, were valuable trade items, often carried carefully wrapped in a piece of leather. The thread itself was frequently not cotton or linen, which could rot in damp conditions, but rather sinew, the long, strong tendons extracted from the legs and back straps of animals like deer, elk, or buffalo. When properly dried, pounded, and separated into fine fibers, sinew provided an incredibly strong, slightly elastic, and naturally water-resistant thread ideal for stitching leather goods subjected to hard use. Having an awl, a few precious needles, and a ready supply of prepared sinew meant the difference between functional, protective gear and equipment literally falling apart at a critical moment, potentially leaving the mountain man dangerously exposed or unable to continue his journey. Finally, keeping cutting tools functional meant keeping them sharp. A dull knife or a blunted axe is not only frustratingly inefficient, requiring significantly more effort for every task, but also inherently dangerous. More force is needed, increasing the risk of the tool slipping and causing a serious injury, far from any hope of medical aid. Therefore, a whetstone or sharpening stone was another crucial, though often overlooked, component of the toolkit. These stones, perhaps a piece of fine-grained sandstone or slate found along a riverbed and judged suitable, or more likely a specialized stone like Arkansas or Washita stone obtained through trade, were used to carefully hone the edges of knives, axes, and other cutting implements. The process required skill and patience, maintaining the correct angle to restore a keen edge without damaging the blade. Regular sharpening not only maintained the tool's effectiveness, but also significantly prolonged its usable life. The rhythmic, grating scrape of steel on stone by the evening fire would have been a common, almost meditative sound in a mountain man's solitary camp. These everyday tools, the fire kit ensuring warmth and cooked food, the kettle providing sustenance and safe water, the awl and needle-keeping gear functional, the whetstone maintaining the crucial edge, might seem mundane compared to the dramatic power of the rifle or the transformative capability of the axe. But they were the essential glue that held the mountain man's precarious existence together, day after weary day. They enabled warmth, sustenance, and the crucial, constant ability to repair and maintain the very gear upon which everything else depended. Part 4. The Possibles Bag, the Pocket Toolkit. While the heavier tools like axes, traps, and perhaps a spare rifle barrel were carried on pack animals or securely strapped to saddles, the mountain man needed immediate, constant access to a host of smaller yet equally critical items throughout his waking hours. These weren't kept jangling loosely in pockets, which were often lacking or impractical in their traditional buckskin clothing, but were carefully organized and consolidated within a dedicated pouch known universally as the Possibles Bag, or sometimes the Possibles Sack. The name itself speaks volumes about its function. It contained everything possible that one might need at a moment's notice while away from the main camp or pack train, whether tracking game, checking traps, or scouting new territory. This bag, typically crafted from sturdy, durable leather, often buffalo or elk hide, was usually worn slung over the shoulder via a wide strap, resting comfortably and securely at the hip. This position allowed for quick, easy, and often one-handed access to its contents without needing to dismount or remove a larger pack. The specific contents varied considerably based on individual preference, the specific task at hand. A day hunt required different immediate needs than setting a trap line or traveling between camps. And crucially, what supplies were currently available through trade or personal acquisition. However, a core set of items was remarkably common, reflecting the fundamental recurring needs of life on the trail. Almost invariably, the Possibles bag contained the immediate necessities for operating the rifle: a ready supply of pre-patched lead balls, ensuring a quick reload, extra flints, carefully napped and stored to prevent chipping, or a small waterproof tin of percussion caps. Perhaps a small adjustable powder measure or charger made of horn or antler for dispensing consistent powder loads quickly, and essential maintenance tools like a vent pick for clearing the touch hole of a flintlock or a nipple wrench for a percussion rifle. Having these items instantly accessible without fumbling through a larger pack was absolutely crucial for reloading swiftly, whether for a necessary follow-up shot on wounded game, engaging multiple targets, or defending oneself in a sudden, desperate encounter. The indispensable fire-starting kit, the flint, the steel striker, and a small, meticulously waterproofed container holding the precious tinder, often a small tin or a tightly sealed horn tip, was another standard occupant of the Possibles bag. Being able to make a fire quickly in an unexpected downpour after falling into a river or when suddenly benighted far from camp could literally be life-saving. Small repair items also found a vital home here: the ever-useful awl, a few precious needles carefully wrapped in a scrap of leather to prevent loss or breakage, and a hank of prepared sinew for emergency stitching. A broken moccasin lace, a torn strap on a snowshoe, or a ripped seam on a buckskin shirt could be temporarily, but functionally, fixed on the trail, preventing minor inconveniences from escalating into major problems. A small secondary knife, perhaps smaller and lighter than the main belt knife, might also be included for finer tasks, or tools specifically for maintaining the primary knife's edge, like a small pocket-sized whetstone. Other Possibles reflected the individual needs and habits of the owner. A pipe and a pouch of tobacco, as Osborne Russell noted carrying, were common comforts. A piece of dried meat, pemmican, a high-energy mixture of dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries, or parched corn provided a quick trail snack. Fishing line and a few hooks offered an alternative source of food if game was scarce near waterways. Some men carried small mirrors for signaling or personal grooming. Most mountain men, contrary to popular depictions, shaved when possible. Others might include rudimentary first aid items like medicinal herbs or bandages, personal trinkets, religious items, or even small tools for gunsmithing if they possessed the skill. The bag wasn't necessarily large, perhaps the size of a modern crossbody bag or small messenger bag, but it was typically densely packed with the small, hard-won essentials for immediate action and emergency use. More than just a simple container, the Possibles bag represented the mountain man's philosophy of readiness, his ingrained self-sufficiency distilled into a single accessible package. It was his mobile pocket toolkit, his first line of defense against the myriad unforeseen problems the wilderness could throw at him, holding the keys to his immediate survival needs while on the move, far from the relative security of his main camp. Part 5. The Legacy. Looking back at the collective toolkit of the mountain man, the powerful axe shaping wood, the accurate rifle claiming game, the cunning traps securing furs, the versatile knives performing countless tasks, the essential kettle providing warmth and water, the vital fire kit banishing darkness, the small repair tools holding gear together, and the immediate essentials nestled within the Possibles bag. We see far more than just a random collection of objects. We see a carefully evolved, highly functional system, a curated set of items born from generations of frontier experience, enabling survival and even a measure of prosperity in one of Earth's most challenging and unforgiving environments. Each tool had its specific purpose, often multiple overlapping purposes, and the true genius of the mountain man lay not merely in possessing these tools, but in achieving an absolute mastery over their use, their maintenance, and their occasional ingenious improvisation. These tools were the critical interface between human ingenuity and the raw, untamed power of nature. They allowed for the construction of shelter against brutal storms and sub-zero temperatures, the harvesting of food from elusive and often dangerous wildlife, the defense against predators, both animal and human, and the procurement of the valuable furs that, for a brief, intense period, drove a global economic engine. These tools were often heavy. They demanded constant care and attention, and their loss or failure could be catastrophic. Yet, in the skilled hands of a seasoned frontiersman, they became instruments of profound independence, enabling a life of unparalleled freedom, rugged adventure, and deep connection to the natural world that continues to capture our collective imagination. The legacy of these seemingly simple tools isn't confined to dusty museum displays or the romanticized pages of history books. It serves as a potent reminder of a time when survival depended fundamentally on practical skills, resourcefulness, and a deep hands-on understanding of basic yet powerful technology. It prompts us, perhaps in our age of digital convenience and complex machinery, to consider our own relationship with the tools we use every day, and maybe to rediscover and appreciate the fundamental power that lies in the ability to make, to mend, and to truly master the implements that shape our world and ensure our well-being. Learning about these tools sparks a deeper appreciation for the skills involved. If you were intrigued by the fire starting kit, you won't want to miss our deep dive into 7 ways mountain men started fires without matches. And understanding the importance of shelter naturally leads to appreciating the skills shown in our video on top 7 winter survival tricks from the Rocky Mountains. Both are available right here on Wild America. What tool from the Mountain Man's kit do you find most fascinating or essential? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the heart of the wild frontier. This is Sam, and you've been watching Wild America. Until next time, stay sharp, stay resourceful, and stay wild.